Hey guys, it's Hannah from Is It Bad? Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode. Is it bad if my sheet pans are all messed up? And we called it messed up because we wanted to encompass a couple different things, like one, when they change color, and two, when they do that weird boingy warping thing. And you guys had some awesome questions and comments all about them, so I want to talk about a few. First off, Lynn Deln asked, should I toss if it's flaking? I use, but I cover it with foil. So there are a couple different ways your sheet pan will change color. One, it will get duller. Two, it will get covered in a coating of polymerized oil. The third is when there's black stuff flaking off, and that's carbonized food, basically, like really, really burnt, crispy stuff. And so I think if it's flaking off, it's going to be the burnt and crispy stuff. And you don't have to toss it at all, but you should clean it off because you don't want that on your food. It's not dangerous, but it's gross. And the easiest way to clean this is someone, Ross B3 also asked, what's the easiest way to clean? Because it makes an uneven surface, and I don't want bits flaking off when I'm scraping the pan, which is a good point. That's a royal we, Andrea Geary from Cooks Illustrated, did an amazing series of tests on this, how to get these pans clean. Here's what she tried. Barkeeper's Friend, Comet, hydrogen peroxide, baking soda, hydrogen peroxide and baking soda combined, borax, magic eraser, and scrubbing with a ball of foil. And she said, actually, all of them were not useful and didn't really work, despite there being plenty of videos online that show them really working well. In practice, they actually didn't work that well. But she said the best thing was that it was a ball of crumpled up foil. But she said it makes a terrible noise, first of all, and it will scratch up your pan a little bit, but it does an awesome job of getting off that the flaky stuff that you don't want. Okay, another question from Luxury Card Store 3. If it's warped, does it mean that you shouldn't use it? Sorry, but I don't know what's wrong with using a warped sheet pan. Mine aren't yet, but I just want to know for when this does happen. So you can still use a sheet pan that's warped. It's not, it's still a surface to hold things. But the difference is first of all, when it warps, it shifts like that. So it brings the food into an uneven distance from the heating element. So part of it, the food's raised up, part of it's lowered. This might not make a difference. It kind of depends on what you're cooking. It can boing food off, like if it's really a dramatic one, it can send the food up, which is definitely a bad thing. But it can also be dicey to transfer. So this happened to me, and we have an awesome recipe, actually, I think Andrea Geary made it. This is the Andrea Geary episode. She made for eggplant parmesan, and it cooks in the oven, which is so awesome. It makes less mess, and it's really easy. You don't have to fry in batches, and it gets super crispy and delicious, just like it was fried. But you cook with quite a bit of oil they cook on a sheet pan, and it cooks with quite a bit of oil. I forget how many tablespoons, but enough that if you pick it up, it runs around the pan. So at home, my pan boinged in the oven, and the oil all ran to one part. So first of all, the eggplant cooked unevenly because some of it was pooled in oil and some was drier. Obviously, the ones pooled in oil were more delicious than the dry ones. And I ate those. I gave my husband the other ones. But the pan was also really scary to get out of the oven because I had to hold it. It was all crooked, and then the oil was all pooled in one side. So it was quite a dicey transfer. So you just really want to be careful when they boing and make things uneven, and you have a lot of oil in the pan. But that said, the pan is still usable. It might make things cook a little unevenly if it's raised in one direction more than the other. But I cooked with boingy pans for years, and they still do work. They're just not as easy to use and transfer, and they're a little less safe if you got a ton of oil in there. All right. So from a question from eCarden3. Is it bad if I use my stockpot as a Dutch oven? This is a great question. So stockpots have they can have the same capacity. They're big pots, basically, just like a Dutch oven. The difference is they're thinner. And this matters for a couple reasons. They'll actually transfer the heat a little faster, so if you're browning things, they can scorch. But that said, they're way lighter than a traditional cast iron Dutch oven, like our Winner from Le Creuset or our Best Fry from Cuisinart. So it's kind of a pro-con situation. If you want a lighter pot because you don't want to be hauling out a heavy cast iron pot, a stock pot is a great option, but just be careful because it will run a little hotter, and you might scorch things. You might need to make sure you really stir the bottom up, so things don't get stuck on there. So it's not a bad thing. It'll just run a little faster. Okay, and then Chronos772 asked, are the sheet pans, they heat better, but are they safe? What is all that gunk on the surface, and is it harmful? If it's dulled, there isn't anything on the surface. The surface is just getting like microscopically pitted and a little beat up. So that's fine. If it's polymerized oil, that's also totally fine. It's little thin layers of oil baked on, much like a cast iron skillet or a carbon skillet, so that's totally safe. If it's the burnt carbonized food, the black flaky stuff, you don't want to be eating that. So I would say you would want to try to get that off, and I think foil is your best option with that. It will scratch up your pan a little bit and make a horrible sound, but Andrea also suggested just scrubbing your pan with soap and water and then taking a spatula and really just raking it up and down either side of it. So both of those are good to try. All right, thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. As you can see, my location looks a little messy. I'm in the Tastings and Testings lab. That's the team I'm on here at ATK. We're called the Tastings and Testings team. We do all of the equipment and product reviews, best olive oil, best blender. And we have a whole lab here. I usually record in here. It's really cool. You can see all this stuff. This stuff. This is our science shelf. We've got all sorts of high-tech scales and calipers and infrared guns and all these really cool stuff in there. Below on the floor, let me see if I can... Yetis! Whoa. We're doing Yeti. These things are filled with ice, and they've been filled with ice for days and days and days, and we're doing melting temperature tests, and you can see we've got some sous vide machines back there, egg cookers, a lot of active testing going on here that you guys will be reading about soon. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to check out next week's episode all about nonstick. Is it safe? What is it? Yada, yada. All right, thanks. Bye.